Hey there, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are covering the NFL draft risers. Now, these are a lot of the guys that have been flying up draft boards, whether it's within the mock draft community, whether it's some of the scouts, and also some of the general managers talking about these prospects that have really moved these guys up the board. A lot of it has to do with some of those combine and pro day performances, which definitely has moved the needle for these couple of prospects. So, moving into the very first one, and a guy that's highly controversial is TRAVON Walker. He's 6'5", 270, a guy that was an absolute beast in terms of a physical specimen at Georgia. Now, his production didn't necessarily match exactly, what he can be at that next level, but scouts are drooling over him. I know even Trent Baalke from Jacksonville has said that he thinks this guy could be very much like Aldon Smith, which could be an interesting kind of comparison. He's a physical beast, a guy that can get after the quarterback, relies a lot on that power rush, which is going to be interesting to see if that can really translate to the next level. But looking at what TRAVON Walker is, the guy had a phenomenal combine, especially that 40 time. Definitely dazzled with that one. I think it was 4.51 was his official 40, which is absolutely absurd for his size and how powerful he is. So TRAVON Walker, I understand a lot of people are getting excited about him as a prospect, what he can bring to that next level and kind of banking on potential. Because if you think about the first round, sometimes you want to go ahead and select guys with that high ceiling. If they didn't necessarily show it at the collegiate level, it's a cautionary tale, though. We've seen this happen before. These combine warriors come in and they kind of prove why, they were just the combine warriors. Not all of them are great football players. I don't think that's going to be TRAVON Walker in that capacity. However, I think he has a very high ceiling, and a lot of people are getting excited about him. We had seen him, throughout the course of the year, at the end of the first round, kind of moving up to that middle of the first round, and then finally, he is in that top 5 conversation, potentially even at number 1 for Jacksonville, which they've had a lot of internal discussions about him as a prospect. So TRAVON Walker is one of those big names that we definitely have to be monitoring when it comes draft night. The next one, another edge, Jermaine Johnson. And Jermaine Johnson, 6'4", 254. He ran a 4.58 40. This is a prospect that people are definitely going to have to keep their eye on as well. The former JUCO product showed out and showed that he can be a big-time playmaker on that defensive line. A guy that's able to get after the quarterback, could be an absolute menace at that edge spot. A lot of production from Jermaine Johnson as well. The former Georgia product, he went to JUCO and then ended up back at Florida State. He has a high ceiling. A lot of people are really starting to see that. Another guy that can consistently get after the quarterback, also defends the run very, very well. Jermaine Johnson has been all over the place as well. If you kind of look at it, start of the year, really wasn't on a ton of people's radars. And then all of a sudden he's worked himself into that middle of that first round to even potentially a top 10 level selection. With some of those edges, those edge needy teams, Jermaine Johnson could be a guy for some of those teams in the middle of that first. Travis Jones, another guy, was kind of relatively unknown on that UConn defense. And then, progressively, he's continued to work himself into that first round conversation. He's definitely not on a lot of people's radars, but looking at Travis Jones on a defense that was not very good, he was the shining star in the middle there in that interior defensive line. One of the best run defenders in the entire nation. And there's a lot of value in that in this league. People will continuously say it's a passing league. However, Travis Jones can be a true nose tackle for a football team, in my opinion. This guy brings a lot of power, controls gaps very, very well. And looking at him as a prospect, he's going to continue to gain traction. These guys are a little tougher in the draft season to get super hyped for, but Travis Jones is a name that we definitely have to continue to watch. Considering some of these interior defensive linemen, after Jordan Davis, then who is it? I think Travis Jones could potentially solidify himself in that middle, that the end to middle of that first round. I don't really see him going in that middle part of it, but it's very possible. Depends if a team falls in love. Like the Chargers are a team that very well could be seeking out his help, but I see him being an end of first round guy, in my opinion. Now we have Boy Mafe from Minnesota, a guy that had 10 sacks or 7 sacks throughout the course of the season, 10 tackles for loss. He's 6'3", 261. But really what caught people's attention was his 40 time. I definitely think when you run a 4.53, that is going to put people on the radar here. So looking at Mafe and what he was able to do at the University of Minnesota, he was phenomenal. A guy that was consistently getting after the quarterback in his senior season, definitely showed out. But once again, a lot of it came down to as well. Senior Bowl dominated a lot of one-on-ones. The guy was absolutely terrific against some of the best in the country. So when you look at that in that scope, he's a terrific athlete, which is a big one for these high risers. Also, we have to consider his body of work. His production definitely showed up as well. Mafe is one of those late risers that very well could see the end of the first round. Was thought to be at one point probably a fourth round level player, but with the combine and a lot of this, traction throughout the entire offseason, I think you can see Mafe definitely in that consideration of being in that first round. Definitely doable. At the very worst, I think he's kind of worked himself to being a top of the second round guy. Edge rushers are very tough to find like that at that point in the draft. So there's going to be a lot of teams seeking out Mafe when it comes draft time. We have George Pickens here, and George Pickens is one of those players that people tend to forget about. I think we forget about how good George Pickens was on. He was really on his way to potentially being a number one wide receiver when it came to the NFL draft. That kind of changed. In his freshman year, he had 700 yards, which is absolutely incredible, was well on his way. And then he ends up tearing his ACL. Long recovery for George Pickens. It took a lot for him to come back. It ends up coming back and makes one of the biggest catches, obviously, for Georgia in that title game. So George Pickens is a very, very talented prospect. People were scared of Wade by the injury, and that's a very, very fair point and a rightful point. But I think when you kind of look at, where he is as a prospect, he's got the huge 6'3" frame, 195 pounds, all muscle. This guy can definitely do it all. He should be in that consideration as one of the top wide receivers in the draft, but continuously his name has not been thrown in that conversation. A lot of people see him as potentially like a wide receiver 7. I think he's a better wideout than that. A lot of talented guys in this class. However, when they got him in that 7 to 10 range, I am completely out on some of those narratives. But people are starting to, re-pick up on why he was one of the top recruits in the nation, why he was such a special player for Georgia in his freshman season, and a guy as a true freshman that was able to absolutely dominate. So very impressive there for George Pickens. I think this could be a very, very intriguing prospect at the end of the first round. I think of teams like Green Bay that are looking at wide receivers at the end of that first. Definitely something that we have to consider. There's a lot of teams at the end of the first round that are going to be needing wide receivers. Kansas City, Green Bay are two teams that you definitely have to keep on your radar. George Pickens could fit in very, very nicely as a terrific red zone threat. You give him another year to get healthy and get back into the football swing of things, and this guy is going to be a dangerous weapon at that next level, in my opinion. From everything that he brings on the field, he's a pretty good route runner, really good hands, and a guy that can go up and get it in that red zone. So George Pickens is one of those prospects that, because of injury was kind of pushed to the side. However, I don't think that's going to be the case. NFL draft time comes. Teams are starting to retake notice of George Pickens. So he should be a priority on a lot of people's boards. So I like that collective list. I think that makes a lot of sense. These guys' names have continued to rise up week after week. So it will be interesting to see when it comes down to the NFL draft, how many of these continue to stick. And then if there's any potential fallers on this list, let me know in the comment section below. Who are some of the other draft risers that I potentially missed? Also, let me know of these guys here. Who is your favorite prospect of this collective group? Really, really appreciate the support. And I can't wait to see you guys in our very next utility sports video.